Hey guys, so I'm back, and today I am talking to my friend Dr. Aviva Romm. I'm super excited to have a conversation with her about birth during this crazy time. I don't even want to say what the name of this issue is because people are being censored all over the place. So hang on a second here. Get going live with Dr. Aviva. Hopefully it'll be there in just a second. Hi.
Hi.
Oh my gosh,
Hi.
it's so nice to see you. How's everything going?
Nice to see you too. You know, it's going. Just doing the work and trying to stay sane and trying not to look at the numbers. As long as I don't look at the numbers, I can breathe.
Oh my gosh, I know. I feel like I'm trying to breathe too.
Yeah.
I suppose everybody is.
Everybody.
I know. It's like this, it's such a crazy roller coaster. I feel like 1 minute I'm like, yes, I've got this. I can do all of the things I need to get done and like take care of all the things. And then the next minute I'm just like a hot mess. Got to scrape me up off the floor.
I know. And then every now and then I have this really weird cognitive emotional sensation, like I've just dropped acid or something, and all reality feels distorted and like I'm supposed to wake up from something that I'm not waking up from.
Totally.
But can I tell you what, the biggest thing I feel is gratitude.
Yes.
It's really true because I'm healthy. I can pay my rent. You know, it's like, well, my mortgage, I'm like, I'm okay. And that gives me a sense of inner stability. Mm-hmm. And it gives me a sense of stability. Like I can do work to help support other people. A lot of people aren't okay right now.
This is the thing that's been getting to me the most is the millions and millions of Americans who are not okay right now.
Yeah.
I mean, how many people are struggling? Somebody mentioned the other day on Facebook that they don't qualify for unemployment. So she was like, I'm just going to take the last $400 I have to my name and figure it out. And it's not okay.
And
this
you know,
lack of safety net.
I was talking with my oldest daughter last night, and she said, you know, what's really amazing, Mom, is now all of us are feeling what half of us feel all the time. And it's true. Like when I was working in clinic in Boston, I mean, we had this whole, where I worked outside of Boston, there was so much homelessness that there was a motel, well, 2 motels in our town that were retrofitted, and the doctors rotated weekly going to the motel to provide free medical care. We'd show up when the food trucks showed up for food delivery. And like there was one family from Ethiopia. There were 8 family members living in a motel room. Like one kid slept in the bathtub. There was another mom who had moved from a housing project in New York to outside of Boston. Mm-hmm. She had 2 kids. The youngest, when they came to see me at the clinic, because they met me at the homeless home, the youngest had lead poisoning from paint that was, you know, we were told was taken out of these housing projects in the 70s when I was a kid growing up in a housing project. So it's crazy. Like we're all experiencing this sort of instability that so many people feel all the time in a different way. And then we've got this added level of just crazy infection on top of it that feels like a science fiction movie that's really happening.
It really does. I know. We could totally liken it to that. I know. And I just so hear everything that you're saying. And I agree. I'm feeling the collective uncertainty. And that's what's, brings up, I think, so much anxiety for everyone. Yeah. And speaking of which, you know, it's interesting. I was talking to a number of people over the last couple of weeks about what would happen with home birth. Like who was going to be affected, and would people start doing more home births? Would this become more of a popular thing? By the way, that's my sister in the background. She just decided to come downstairs now.
I wonder who that was. It didn't look like Hayden. Hi, sister.
Not Hayden. Aviva says hi. So does everybody else. She's like, yeah. Anyway, so the point is that I was thinking about the fact that are people going to be choosing more home births? Like what's going to happen with midwives and doulas? And I was so curious what your thoughts were on this because now I have the expert.
Yeah. So for those of you guys who don't know me, I was a home birth midwife for 20 something years and then went to med school, got my MD, did my internship in internal medicine. So I do all adult everything. And then I did my residency in family medicine with obstetrics, means that I'm trained in like total all person health throughout life with actually the added ability of delivering babies in the hospital and all that medical stuff that we do. So I kind of have these two interesting perspectives and set of life experiences. I was just talking to my daughter yesterday and then to another friend, and I said, just mark my words, this is going to be the most record year on home birth since probably 1915.
Oh, yes.
I am confident of it. And I said, my daughter said, Mom, what do you think are going to be the boom businesses this year? I said, home birth, midwifery, and at-home hair coloring.
Oh, God, at-home hair coloring.
Clothes, right?
Yeah, and nails.
Hair the influencers all really have. But seriously, though, what's happening right now is kind of an almost explosion of an issue that really needed attention anyway. So right now, we've got otherwise largely healthy women who are pregnant, right? Pregnancy and birth are not a disease or a medical condition.
Right,
there are women who are high risk who do need to go to the hospital. But we've got those women, plus all these otherwise low-risk women who in so many European countries and Canada would have their babies at home, federally subsidized, with good care, well-trained, licensed midwives who are going to otherwise be now going into hospitals that are understaffed, undersupplied. Yeah. And now we know that probably a significant number of healthcare workers are also COVID positive.
Well, exactly.
Positive. So you've got healthy people going into an overly strained system for very sick people right now. And it's never made sense, right? In the entire history of American birth for 200 years, or 180 years, it's never made sense to have the level of medical intervention that we've had for a normal natural event. And we know that a lot of that medical intervention actually increases women's risks.
Exactly.
On the other hand, it's a really complicated time because, one, not every state has well-trained every state has midwives, but it's a wild west. You can have gone to a few births and call yourself a midwife. You could wake up one day and feel like you have a calling and call yourself a midwife, or you could have gone and gotten really well trained as a midwife, and everything on the spectrum in between. So we've got that as like a very difficult situation for mothers to try to figure out who's actually really qualified. And we do know that a small percentage of women will get sick, and some of them will get really sick. And those midwives, most midwives are not capable of recognizing or handling that at home. Yeah. And then women who do even need a medical transport, the medical system is such a mess for transports right now.
Exactly.
That if they need to go from home to hospital in a complication, that whole process may be slowed down and it may be difficult. So it's really a challenging situation, but we're definitely going to have more home births. Midwives are getting calls in record numbers, and this has been going on for weeks. Like, midwives are getting called like a dozen a day.
That's amazing. I mean, that just thrills me. It's just going to be so interesting to see how this plays out.
It is.
This continues.
And on the one hand, one of my mentors when I was at Yale, who's head of a major medical center in one of the major Ivy League cities, wrote me when this was starting to happen 3 weeks ago. I wrote him, I'm not going to name any names just to respect other people's privacy, and they might not want to go on record with these things, but I wrote him and I said, hey, I think that we're going to be facing a situation where women are not going to get support in the hospital and they're going to be going toward home birth.
Right.
And I thought he was going to freak out when I said that, and he said, he said, home birth, that's a really interesting public health option that we should be thinking about. And then again,
revelation.
I wrote this other OB who is super well known and incredible and just a huge advocate for midwifery and home birth. Yeah. And he wrote me a couple of days ago in response to an email, and he said, we really need to be telling women not to have their babies at home right now, because if they are sick or get sick, they could crash really fast.
Oh my God.
So I'm getting these like conflicting, thoughts from inside the system too.
Yeah, I mean, that's so challenging. And so I guess like the question is, what happened in New York last week, you were really advocating for women to be able to, or anyone who's birthing, to be able to have a partner with them when, they're birthing, and then Andrew Cuomo signed an executive order for that. Do you mind? I'm sorry. I'm just like trying to do an Instagram live here. It's fun times sharing home with a family member.
I don't know if you
Anyways.
remember this, but like a couple of years ago, we moved into our house and I had no internet in my house. So I had to go to
Yes.
town for everything I was doing.
I do remember
And so
that.
this guy in my town, he's like a world famous National Geographic photographer, lent me his studio and cafe at night. But he'd
Yes, I
come in
totally
there.
remember.
Sometimes he was in there and he would just flush the toilet with the door, like, it was just like, dude,
I know, right? We're trying here. We're trying.
This is what happens when we're working at home in a time of COVID-19.
No joke. Exactly. So anyways, back to Andrew Cuomo and
so
the fact
what
that he signed this
happened
executive order.
Yeah, so hospitals are really overrun right now.
Right.
And there is a legitimate concern that every single person who comes into the hospital who is asymptomatic could get other people sick. And so there's a legitimate concern that a birthing partner or a doula could come in and expose and infect hospital staff.
Right.
Right
of course.
now, I honestly think it would be fair to say that hospital staff are much more of a risk to people coming in a sense, because they're probably exposed and infected based on the numbers we know.
Right.
That shouldn't be a reason that somebody who needs to be in the hospital shouldn't go to the hospital, but it's something we need to keep in mind. So what happened was a lot of hospitals around the country said you can only bring in one person. So it's either your birth partner or your doula. And that freaked a lot of women out naturally because they were kind of relying on their doula for the support and the advocacy, whereas their partner was going to be more just their person, right?
Yeah, of course.
But most women got used to it. They're like, okay, as long as my partner can come in, I can live with that. And they kind of adjusted to the idea. People were going to get creative and have their doula virtually on an iPad or phone. But
Makes
then,
sense.
yeah, I mean, it could work, right? But then New York State said, well, New York State didn't say, but a bunch of hospitals in New York State said nobody in the hospital with the woman. And I honestly, I mean, I've had 4 babies and my 4 were born at home, but I work in the hospital. I mean, I'm a physician who has spent years working in the hospital.
Yeah.
And as familiar as I am with the hospital and as familiar as I am with birth, even with having had my 4th baby, I cannot imagine going into a hospital by myself to birth.
Yeah.
And legally, all human beings have a legal right to informed consent, meaning somebody is supposed to tell you what the intervention is, why it's needed, whether there are alternatives, and the risks and the benefits. And, you know, anyone who is unable to receive and give informed consent is supposed to have an advocate by law.
Right.
And I know, I mean, and I've had beautiful home births, but if you come into me when I'm at the height of a contraction and tell me that I need to get my epidural now because anesthesia is leaving in 20 minutes, I mean, how can I give informed consent? Or if I'm pushing my baby out and the doctor says, oh, we're just going to need a little snip right now, where all I can think is just get this thing out of me. And then the doctor says, well, your baby's heart tones aren't great, which happened at a birth I was at as a support person to a friend a couple of years ago. Like, how are you in that moment going to be able to actually advocate for yourself? And then add to that, you're an African-American mom who could be any economic status, but you're profiled by the hospital staff as whatever you get profiled as an African-American mom.
Right.
And then you're trying to advocate for yourself. And we saw what happened with Serena Williams.
Exactly.
Right? We all know how she had to work to advocate for herself.
Yeah. Serena effing Williams.
Right. And if she's having to say, there's effing something wrong with me, and no, I'm not just anxious, I'm having a pulmonary embolism, what about that mom who's not Serena Williams?
Exactly.
Any race mom, but especially women who are at the highest risk for being mistreated or having unnecessary interventions at birth.
Right.
So what happened was I started hearing stories. I actually wrote a New York Times op-ed.
Check you out.
They wrote me a letter back. I never did that before, but they wrote me a letter back and said, we've got too much COVID content coming in. So then I sent my article to another publication and they said, well, my story was about one of my patients who was having her 2nd baby. And the person wrote back and said, well, it's her 2nd baby. Shouldn't she be able to handle it? It's going to be much easier than her 1st baby. And a doula isn't really a necessary person. And that was at the point where just still, where partners were still allowed. So then this doula in New York, Jessie Parnassus, I'm not sure I'm saying her last name right, but she and I have been in touch, but she never said her last name to me. But she had the brilliant idea, before we ever connected, this was how I heard of her, to go on change.org and create a petition about this.
Yeah.
And that petition got 600,000 signatures in about a week. And I started a campaign, hashtag I deserve birth support, which is still going.
Good.
Because even though on Saturday, which was a huge victory, Cuomo gave an executive order that every hospital in New York State is required to allow a woman to bring in a birth partner of her choice. The person has to be healthy, which is legit. I mean, they can't have a fever or be sick, but then she could bring someone else. Was just huge, and it really sets a national precedent. So now this hashtag I deserve birth support, and this the other thing that I had as my kind of campaign was no woman should have to birth alone. And it really is no person should have to birth alone. Is being picked up by women in other countries, other states, to try to make sure that women have the right to a person in labor. And this is huge, because every aspect of women's reproductive health right now, which was already marginalized, is being further marginalized. So there are states that are saying having an abortion is an elective procedure.
I'm beside myself.
That should be deferred.
Yeah.
Getting birth control is getting really difficult for a lot of women. So this is just kind of like, to me, a precedent for reproductive care already being marginalized, women's psycho-emotional needs being trivialized, and the idea that birth is just this medical event as long as the mom and baby come out basically alive at the other end.
Right.
Some hospitals were talking about now inducing labor at 39 weeks to get women in and out of there while they were uninfected, or before, you know, this big tidal wave of more pregnant women comes in and maybe has COVID. So it's been a really amazing thing to see something change that quickly in a week, and we hope it, you know, protects the rights of women to have what is really a legal right, which is someone who's an advocate.
Absolutely. I mean, this brings up so much for me. I was just thinking about the fact that you're talking about, first of all, women at-risk populations who are already, who are already, you know, marginalized in such a way that, you know, they have a hard time getting birth control. They have a hard time in a hospital birth setting. They have a hard time getting an abortion. And now all of these things are becoming even more difficult, if not impossible, for so many of them. I was just outraged by the abortion situation in a number of states where they're just basically saying, these are elective procedures. You can't,
well,
closing that down,
like,
option down.
Yeah, this morning I was thinking about it, Nicole, and, you know, I'm like, please, like, trigger warning, but this is real. Like, all the young girls and young women who are now trapped at home with an abuser in the same states where they're not going to be able to get morning after pill. I mean, it's pretty staggering to think about.
It's so sobering. Yeah. I mean, it truly is. I completely agree with you. I know. And that, so like coming back to the birthing side of things. So you said that you feel as though Andrew Cuomo's decision is setting a precedent for other states. Like, what are other states doing at this point? Do you know, or like what's shifting?
Yeah, so most states that have high activity of infection are just saying one person in the birth room. I mean, and that's reasonable. I mean, we do want to reduce exposure, and I really do. I mean, I so understand and just have an insane, inordinate amount of compassion for people in New York. You know, you're from New York, I'm from New York. Our family, my families, and my son and my daughter-in-law are in healthcare. They're on the ground every day doing the work. My daughter-in-law is actually in charge of a whole hospital system in New Jersey's ventilator access, and you know, hearing what's happening on the ground is truly overwhelming and heartbreaking. And at the same time, you know, we've established over decades, right, with the Nuremberg agreements, that like we have precedents in a wartime or in a crisis. We can't infringe on human rights and legal rights. Yeah. And so there has to be that balance between the safety of healthcare workers, but also the safety of otherwise well women who are having to go into essentially a war zone to have their baby, but that doesn't mean their rights can be stripped away. Right. So I think that the decision to, you know, enforce 14-day quarantines, to or at least like expect 14-day quarantines to shelter in place to limit the number of people that can go in the hospital. I 100% get it. And also, and I mean, I am absolutely privileged to be a doctor who could totally move my healthcare completely to telemedicine. So
Yeah.
I'm not having to go, I'm able to shelter it in place. So, you know, I'm sort of loath to put anyone else who's doing the work on the ground at more risk. I totally get it. But we do know that not having any birth support increases a woman's risk of longer labor. It means she's going to be in the hospital longer,
Right.
which is not what we want right now. It increases her risk of having an induction to get her labor going if she's in early labor and it's not picking up, because we know that not having that support slows things down, means you get an induction. An induction means that she has a slightly longer labor risk also, and a higher risk of a cesarean. A cesarean means no early discharge. It means you're in the hospital for 3 days instead of 24 hours. And we know that just a C-section alone increases a woman's risk of infection, clotting, emboli, other complications. So it's like we were trading a theoretical risk to protect one group, but creating an actual potential risk for pregnant moms. So it's tricky. I mean, there are no easy answers right now. Yeah. And like I said, I mean, home birth should be a well-supported, it should have been. Like, we should be able to call up the midwives the way we call up the National Guard right now.
Yeah.
Home birth should be absolutely covered by the federal government as an incentive to keep people out of the hospital, which is overburdened, with great support for home birth midwifery care, which so many other countries already have. So this is bringing up a big glaring gap in our healthcare system that needs to be fixed.
Yeah, well, I was thinking that I shared an article on Facebook last week about the fact that this whole epidemic or this pandemic is bringing up or shedding light on all of the issues that we have in our current healthcare model and in our government in general. But, you know, in particular in our healthcare, the fact that, I mean, people are now getting bills for treatment of COVID-19 in the hospital. And it's just like, are you kidding me right now? Like, this is, and they have no job and they're, you know, can't pay their rent.
Anybody who has someone in their family who struggles with a mental health problem, or anyone who's listening who struggles with a mental health problem, I got just this most heartfelt, like, you know, those 8-paragraph emails that someone really took the time to write. And it was just beautiful and articulate. I told her, I said, you need to send this in for a New York op-ed, this New York Times op-ed. This is so good. But she's a psychologist. Yeah. Who, she said 50% of people with mental health challenges in this, or mental health disease in this country, are not covered for telemedicine.
Oh my goodness.
So they're either going to get billed outright by their practitioner, or their practitioner's not going to get paid, or they're not going to get services at all.
It's like, this is what I'm saying. I mean, like, these rules or these laws or whatever there is in place, it almost feels like they're just set up to punish people. And that is not how we need to do society. It is so backwards. So yeah, like, I just love that you decided to take on this whole thing, because I was, like I said, weeks ago, I was thinking, I wonder what's going to happen with home birth, and I wonder what will happen with midwives and doulas. And so it's amazing to see this massive shift, just this tidal shift in just a couple of weeks. So yeah, like, I'm curious about, you know, like, what can people do if you're getting close to giving birth? Because I've talked to numerous friends and clients or former clients who are pregnant currently, and they're just so worried. So like, what's the deal? What do we do?
Well, if you're early pregnant right now, or even second trimester, you're going to have some shifts in your prenatal care. But other than your prenatal care largely going to telemedicine, you know, I would say, like, my daughter's best friend is pregnant right now, and she's not due for another, like, 4 or 5 months. And she wrote me last night, and she texted me. I've known her since she was a little girl. And she texted me and she said, "Great news, my OB told me that I can have my husband and my doula." And I was like, that's awesome. I said, I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, but you're in a state that has very low exposure right now. So in 3 months or 2 months or 4 months or 5 months, that could change. So I would still be prepared to have a backup plan where she's not a candidate for a home birth because of previous complications. I said, where your doula is virtual and your partner is prepared to support you. And she was like, thank you for saying that. You know, it's just, right now we do have to have, we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow or next week. And I don't think, I don't want to be negative, but I mean, it's spreading to states that already have low volume of exposure now. So
right.
yeah, hopefully it won't ever get anywhere like it is in New York, but we just need to think ahead a little bit and have that good support. If you're due now and you're living in a state that has relatively low rates, you know, you're not on shelter in place, then going to the hospital is, if that's your plan, is still completely reasonable. Yeah. Anyone who's high risk with any prenatal complications, gestational diabetes, high blood pressure, but even things like a VBAC or a breech birth, which normally some midwives might still support at home, I would say anything that you're high risk with now, or your birth is higher risk that could require emergency services and a fast transport, you can't count on that the way you may have maybe been able to count on it 6 weeks ago, but maybe not anyway, because the home birth transport situation in the US is pretty sketchy anyway. It's difficult. So I would have the baby in the hospital if you meet those criteria. And you can talk about that with your OB, your family doctor, your midwife to see, you know, what is the best place for you. If you're relatively low risk and you're thinking about an option that's not the hospital, a birthing center is definitely a great middle option, but they're getting booked fast. So if you're doing 6 months, 3 months, 3 weeks, contact your local birthing centers now. If you are in a state where you, let's say you're in New York and you find a birthing center in New Jersey or Connecticut that's going to take you, I understand that you want to get out of New York, but keep in mind that if you leave New York and you go to another hospital, for every one person that's sick, at least 2 people are going to likely get infected. So that's where our own commitment to public health really is going to come against sort of our own personal needs. But I would really ask people to stay in the state you're in, if you can, for the most part. Home birth is certainly an option if you're low risk and you have a well-qualified midwife and you do not have any symptoms of COVID-19. I would say this: if you would never think of a home birth otherwise, and home birth is just not for you, I wouldn't go for it. I wouldn't, because I feel like the stress and the anxiety about having a home birth is not going to help you have your baby easily. It's still best to be where you actually sort of emotionally and psychologically feel safest.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And so in terms of a home birth, if someone is considering that, like what do they do? Do they just have to have a conversation with their doctor, midwife, whoever?
Have a conversation with your doctor. And then if your doctor knows any midwives, and it could be an OB or a family doctor, we all do the baby thing. If they know a midwife that they feel really good about and they're willing to make a referral or give you that name, that's great. Otherwise, every state has a midwifery organization. We all have state midwifery organizations. And then there are also national organizations like the North American Registry of Midwives, the North American Certified Professional Midwifery Org, so NACPM, NARM, and MANA, the Midwives Alliance of North America, as well as ACNM, which is the American College of Nurse Midwives. Right. And they all have certified midwives in different states. So look and see what the licensing and state requirements are where you live, and then pick a midwife who meets the criteria. Now, some states do not recognize home birth midwives, in which case you want to still go with someone who has one of those credentials if you are, if you can. And then I'm going to do a whole Instagram live on Friday at, I think, noon or 2 about, the questions to ask if you're looking for a midwife, how to know if you're low risk or not. But I do have this little book that I wrote like 20 years ago. And I just discovered today it's $4.99 on Amazon Play or something. I don't even know what that is.
Neither.
But it looks like it's downloadable. I'm about to try and download it because I would give away the PDF, but for some reason it's my only book I don't have a PDF of. I've got a floppy disk, but that's it.
A floppy disk.
That's how
hilarious.
long ago I wrote it. It was on a
yeah,
floppy.
Girl. Yep.
So that book is, it's called A Pocket Guide to Midwifery Care, and it's all about how to pick a midwife, how to choose your birthplace, and it's still relevant. I mean, it's 20 years old, but there's been some progress. More states have legal midwives, but the general, like, what questions to ask a home birth midwife to see if she's experienced, and see if she feels right to you, you know, is important. The other thing I would say is if you're thinking about having a home birth, even if it's in 3 months from now, it's very affordable to buy your home birth kit. And supplies are running tight all over the country for personal protective equipment, other supplies. So I would go ahead, even if you're just thinking about it, go online, look for home birth supplies, and just buy a home birth kit, which has the basics. If you don't need it, you can donate it.
Yeah.
It's simple stuff, but then you'll have what you need.
That's amazing. This is such good advice. Okay, well, I know we're at that time now, so I don't want to take any more of your time, but thank you. This was super, super helpful. Hopefully, there were like a bunch of comments and we didn't really get to them, but I felt like you addressed everything.
Happy if you have time to answer some questions, Nicole. It's not a problem to me.
Yeah. I don't have, I'm just looking, I feel like you answered everything here.
Okay, good.
Yes. Everyone was like, yes, home birth should be well supported. I agree.
Totally.
Yeah. People were talking about the HIPAA compliance with therapy and whatnot. So I feel like that was covered as well. This lady says, I had 2 home births. This is such a wonderful topic. Yes, we agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then there might've been a few more, but I feel like everything that was asked was discussed.
Good.
So yes, thanks. This is so great. I just love that you're doing this and that people should just follow you for information on where this is all going. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to keep a well-maintained page. We're actually working on refurbishing that to move it all the way just to around reproductive health and COVID-19. So access to birth control, access to Plan B, Plan C, what to do if you're pregnant, what to do if you're miscarrying at home. Yeah. And then a lot of birth resources just to support women in this time. But these resources are applicable. You know, here's the thing. This situation was a problem before COVID-19. It's just that COVID-19 has shown a light on it. And they're going to be a problem most likely after. So, yeah, please come follow my page. If you're pregnant, if you've had a baby and you had a great experience having someone support you, just share your story, share a picture from pregnancy, birth, postpartum, and just do hashtag I deserve birth support. So
awesome. Yeah. Okay. There was one question. She says, Aviva, where do you recommend buying herbs at this time?
Yeah. So the one place is Mountain Rose Herbs, and that's my personal favorite source. I don't have any economic ties, but right now, and I think for another week, they are off the grid. They're not selling, but they said they were going to be off for 2 weeks, and it's been like a week and a half now. So check in with Mountain Rose. There's another one called Star. Someone told me just about it yesterday, and I posted about it on my Instagram post under cough syrup. So if you go to my Instagram post, it's a video from yesterday, Sunday. In there, it's like Starfest or something, and a really good friend of mine who sources herbs for the botanical industry said they're really good too.
I feel like I've heard their name too. Somebody mentioned it recently because I feel like Mountain Rose was out, or a lot of the normal places were out.
They just couldn't keep up with their orders. They're a small company. And then for tinctures and capsules and pills, honestly, the easiest thing to do is go to my website. Under the tab on like the homepage above the banner, it says more for you. And there's a supplement store. It's not my supplement store. And any profits, because I get 10% of all supplement sales, 100% of profits that we make go back into supporting maternal health efforts. So we don't take the profits from that, and it's 20% off for you. And the reason I'm recommending that is only because I know, because I talked to the owner, they are stocked out, and they seem to think that most of their suppliers have stock for about a year. And that's where I get my supplements from, and that's where my patients get their supplements from. So that's called Full Script.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Yes. Full Script.
And you might have an access to, Nicole.
Yeah. I do.
They can use yours. Yeah.
Okay. So then we have also, let's see, would be interesting to get a live stream for home birth, birthing center midwives, and how to stay safe and keep our clients safe in our practice.
Can I tell you, I so agree. I really think that live stream supporting births right now would change the world. But it's a lot to ask a mom. Some women do it. But for me, it's so funny. If I ever knew that birth pictures were going to be the thing that makes your Instagram feed go up to like hundreds of thousands, who knew? But to me, birth was so private, so it wasn't something I wanted photos of or, video of. But there are women who are doing it. And some really great websites like Badass Mother Birther, Empowered Birth. There are a few that are really doing just great video and beautiful pictures that I think show the intensity of birth.
Right.
But also the raw power that women have. And
Yeah.
again, you know, I'm not endorsing home birth for everyone or for anyone, but I do think it's a really important public health choice that we should be making as a culture now.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think her question was more along the lines of like, how to stay safe and keep our clients safe in our practice.
Oh,
So
yeah.
information along those lines.
Yeah. I'm going to be doing more live streams for practitioners too. So IG lives, Instagram lives. So if you have specific questions and ideas, just email me. My email is aviva@avivaromm.com. That's my personal email. And I read them all personally. They come to my inbox and I'm really open to ideas. So please.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
One more question here. What is your opinion on free birthing? Any tips?
Well,